Okay, before we proceed, I request once again the host to make me host. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I once again welcome all the students for this interactive counseling session, which is being organized by the Department of English, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. As you all know that we started talking about a particular block, that is language and literature. And within that, we try to understand how language and literature are related. I hope some of you could recall a few things that we discussed in the previous class so that we can move on and talk about one of the topic that we decided in the last class. Ramu was there and some other students were, yeah. Just to know, to break the ice and to start our conversation, I would request any one of you to bring at least a couple of points that we discussed in the last class. Am I clearly audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much.
Last week, we got to know about the difference between language and the relation between language and literature.
Yes, yes.
That was actually primary focus in the last week's class. And last week, we also thought that we would have a class on structuralism this week.
Yes. Okay. So thank you, Ram, for assisting me in taking the conversation forward. Yeah. So as you all know that ours is a unconventional class where we go for a interaction rather than lecture. So I'll make sure that we remain true to the spirit of this counseling session. As we talked about this topic, that is structuralism, that we are planning to take up this week. So I'll start with that. And before I actually go and talk about structuralism, I would be interested to know what you already know about this theory in literature. Have you ever heard about it? Do you know what structuralism is in literature or in the language?
Last year, we had said a little about structuralism, that is language, langue, and parole. It proposed by Ferdinand de Saussure. And we have actually science signifier, signified. We got to know that one in literary criticism, sir, a little about it.
Yeah, great. So that's where it is actually basically talked about in detail. Ours is not a literary theory class, yet in our particular paper, we are trying to look at how things related to language are actually have some connection with the literature, and things that are related to literature have some connection with the language. That is what we are trying to explore. And as you have rightly recalled, some of the basic ideas in structuralism are those the concepts of Sine, signifier, signified, and langue, parole. And yeah, rightly it is given by Ferdinand de Saussure. So we'll try to look at those things in as brief way as possible. Then we'll go and see how these aspects of the language are actually related to literature. Okay, you have already studied about structuralism in your literary theory paper, but now we are looking at it from language point of view, and then we'll see the relation that this structuralism has to literature. Okay, am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, if you look at structuralism, it is basically a way of perceiving the worlds in terms of structures. That means everything that you see around you, okay, everything that you read, everything that you hear, follows certain structure, or we can also say follow certain order, right? No matter what order it is, conventionally we know that there are two different types of order, right? Alphabetic order and chronological order, right? Or numerical order also. Three different types. Okay, order in terms of time is chronological order. Order in terms of alphabet or letters is alphabetical order, and order in terms of numbers is a numerical order. It really doesn't matter whether it's reverse or forward. Okay, we know that reverse chronological order and normal chronological order. So where if things goes from 1 to 12 in our clock, it's chronological order. But something goes from 12 to back to 1, that is reverse chronological order. So the point here is basically everything that we can see, that we can perceive, is basically a structure. Okay, has some structure to it, visible or invisible. It has some structure. That is the very fundamental idea behind structuralism. That is why you see that the very name structuralism comes with the term structure, right? So it is a way of looking at anything and everything around us as structure. And this theory basically started in language, in the understanding of language. Okay, we'll come to that, how and who started this. Now, second important point related to structuralism is that things cannot be understood in isolation. They have to be seen in the context of larger structures they are part of. Now, this is a very critical definition, that anything that you see, okay, could be a structure, but that has to be seen in a larger context. For example, I'm giving you my own examples so that there won't be any problem to anybody. Me as an individual is a unit, right? Is a single unit. But me as a teacher in a system, educational institute as a system, has a different value, different meaning, different altogether different what to say, essence, right? If you see me as single individual, that may be different, completely different than locating me as part of the whole structure. Okay, so here structuralists, what they say that if you want to understand the unit.
Sir, please tell the page number.
Page number.
93, sir.
93, because.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sure. Thanks, we got it. Thank you, Rama, for pointing it out. Okay. So we are not going page wise. We are going based on the important ideas in the topic. Okay. So what I was trying to say is this definition, which says that structuralism is the belief that things cannot be understood in isolation. They have to be seen in the context of larger structures they are part of. So I was trying to give an example to you. That is, if I am teaching to you right today as a individual teacher, right, you may not understand me completely or fully. There is a possibility of you understanding me in a very what we say in a different way. But when you put me in the larger context, that is, I am teaching to you as part of the team of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, which is basically an open university. So you will understand that my way of teaching is not as you see in normal universities or normal conventional classes. So if you fail to recognize or fail to notice or understand me in a context, the meaning that you will derive from my lecture would be completely different, or somebody who is looking at us will understand it differently. He may misunderstand it, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So that is why structuralists say that if you want to understand something or anything, you please put that into a broader context or broader structure, which it is part of. So if you are clear with this definition, I'll try to move on and take up some more important ideas and concepts in structuralism. Okay. So on a very, very fundamental level, let's be very clear that number one, that is structuralism is a way of looking at anything and everything around us as in terms of structures. Second, in order to understand any unit, any individual, anything, you have to put it into a context, put it into a larger structure which it is part of. Okay, these are the two important things that we took up in the initial discussion on structuralism. And just as a normal general information, structuralism as a term is introduced into linguistics by one particular philosopher and linguist, which is nothing, whose name is Roman Jakobson. And it came up during 1926. Okay. So let's move on to some other things related to structuralism. Now, a language is a self-contained relational structure, the elements of which derive their existence and their value from their distribution and opposition in text or discourse. Okay, this particular definition of structuralism is given by Ferdinand de Saussure. Okay, he was a Swiss linguist and a scholar of the language. He said that we know that the basic unit in a language is in terms of sound, right? It is phoneme. Okay? And in terms of writing or written language, it is letters, right? Things start from letter, and letter, when arranged in a meaningful way, becomes word, isn't it? Am I connected with you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Clean.
So in a language, if you write something, you write a sentence, right? But that sentence is made of different words, a combination of words, and we call it sentence because it gives the idea that you want to convey. It carries the sense with it, a meaning with it. But what structuralist like Ferdinand de Saussure says that the meaning of at a sentence level is because of the words and how they are distributed in that structure. You take sentence as a structure. In that larger structure, how different words are arranged and their opposition to each other is what gives you the meaning at the sentence level. That is what the concept that is given by Ferdinand de Saussure. If you take one word at a time, you will have a different meaning. But when those words are arranged in a larger structure, that is sentence in this case, so you will get a different meaning altogether. Do you get it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we have a lot of idioms, right? We have a lot of idioms. We have 8 different parts of speech, right? When you just put it in any order, okay, for a purpose, then those single words which would have given uh, meaning at a word level would start giving a different meaning when they are arranged in a sentence. Got it? For example, here in the slide itself, let's take example of this. There is this is break, this is school, right? And then you have who. Then you have furthered the idea, okay, of structuralism. Now you just take this example. Now each word gives certain meaning. Okay, the is an article, right? It's a definite article. Break may be a name of a place, right? And school, right? An institution where students go and learn. Who is a pronoun, okay?
Relative pronoun.
Relative pronoun. And then you have further, right? Further plus ed, it is acting as a verb, okay? And the again definite article, ideas of the position, right? And structuralism. Now each word gives a meaning, but when these words are put together, they give a different meaning altogether. Understood? So at a larger structural level, those single units tend to give a different meaning. Okay. When I say the Prague school, right? There could be hundreds of schools in Prague. But when I'm saying the Prague school, I'm referring to a very specific, school. Here, school not necessarily mean, where students go and learn. Right? It is a place where people of similar ideas assemble to do something. Got it? So in university also you have a school of languages and linguistics, or a school of sociology, or a school of psychology, a school of mathematics. That doesn't mean where small children come and study as we typically think. Okay, so that's what this definition by Ferdinand de Saussure says. At a isolated level, things would be different, but when they are part of a larger structure, they tend to give a different meaning, and they give actual meaning when they are part of the larger structure. Okay? And the meaning is because of the difference between the words. Okay? Whether it is in text or in discourse. You take it an example of things larger than a sentence, orally or written. Okay. Now these people, what they have done is they started giving attention to elements of a language, okay, and different expression and phonation and all those things. Basically, they paid attention to syntax and structure of the literary text. Now we'll look at some of the after going through a couple of definitions of what structuralism is and who came up with the word structuralism. Now we'll look at some of the key concepts, most important terms used in structuralism and what they mean basically. Now, in the beginning, Ramu has rightly pointed out that in structuralism they have learned about Sine, signifier, and Lang and Perol. Yeah, indeed, those are the key ideas or key concepts in the structuralism. Just to refresh ourselves, we'll go through this and then we'll go on to talk about how these concepts and how structuralism as a theory in language influences literature. Okay. Yeah, this concept of Sine is actually given by again Saussure. What he says that language is a system. What he calls it? What he calls a language? A system whose basic unit is a Sine. Okay. Now we have two to three things to pay attention here. We're trying to understand language in a scientific way, right? And especially one particular way of looking at language given by Ferdinand de Saussure. He says language is a system. Okay. What does it imply? When you call something a system, what does it imply? And it implies, there are multiple elements within that system. And those elements actually make up the system. Isn't it? For example, if you call something as a government, right? We are living in Telangana. Consider Telangana government, right? And Telangana government is a system. It implies that system runs everything that is required for the people. So that is why it has different departments. It has different offices, right? And so many other things required in the system. Okay, and those things actually make up what we call a system. If you remove the departments from the government, if you cut off all offices which are government offices, then what remains is nothing. So system is because of those elements, those constituent parts. So here Ferdinand de Saussure says language is a system, which implies there are so many elements within that system. Okay, and he says in this system the basic unit is a sign. So basically this system is made up of different signs. Okay. We typically and traditionally we know that language has grammar at one side, vocabulary at another side, right? By vocabulary I mean all parts of speech, right? These are rules. Grammars are nothing but rules. These are words. We know this. This is our general understanding of language. Language is comprises of rules, that is grammar, and words, that is vocabulary. Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
So, but Saussure tells us that language is a system which has sign as its basic unit. Now, what does he mean by sign? Okay, what does he mean by sign? He says sign is composed of two elements. Number one, signifier. Number two, signifier. Before that, we have two terms here, okay, which defines sign. One is arbitrary, the other is differential. Now, arbitrary, I think I tried to explain in the previous class, but again I will do it. It is basically related to relation. Arbitrary in the sense, for example, you have Mamadi Kaya or Mamadi Pandu, right? To call this, you may use, say, for example, mango, right? Or somebody may also call it as aam. Somebody may call it Mamadi Pandu. Okay. Now you have this object in nature as a fruit as one thing, but to call this, you either use it mango, aam, Mamadi Pandu, and so many things. Now, what kind of relation this all names and this object has? Can you fix this? that this is the permanent name for this particular fruit? No. If it is permanent, it should have been called with the same name across the planet. There shouldn't have been second name of it, second sound for it. But if you go to different parts of the world, you see that same particular fruit is being called with different sounds in different communities by different language speakers. So that is why linguists say that the relation between these different sounds that you are making, or the signs that you are writing, and the actual thing that you are referring to, that relation is arbitrary, which is non-permanent. Arbitrary means non-permanent. Okay. Have you got me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Now, why it is differential, and what does differential mean? Any idea?
Probably it does not stay constant, sir. Keep on changing time to time.
Yeah. Differential is, yes, something that doesn't remain same. It may change. Okay. So yeah, so these are the two prominent characteristics of a sign. So first, we understood language to be sign according to Saussure. Language is a system and whose basic unit is sign, whereas sign itself is both arbitrary as well as differential. And now, moving to the second layer of understanding of what sign is, we have these two different elements of sign: signifier and signifier. What is signifier and signifier? According to Saussure, okay, a signifier is a sound image or a graphic image, whereas signified is a concept being referent. Okay. How do you understand this? Or have you understood what I explained in the last class about these things? Anybody would like to comment on this?
Signifier and signified, sir.
Yeah.
Signifier is actually the impression that we try to give, sir. Signified is actually the reception level, whatever that they imagine. For example, let's say fly off. If we say the very word fly off, some people may understand that go away silently or go away secretly. Some people may understand that as elope, depending upon the context. If I say that in a restaurant, among the group of the friends, a couple of them, they just flew off. If we say, probably it is understood like they escaped silently. They just moved away from that place silently. And if we say in this the same word, utter the same word, fly off, with a couple related to a boy and a girl, they flew off. Probably people understand that they eloped. That signified may change. Signifier actually does not change. Signified may be changed depending upon the reception levels of the people on the context.
Okay, thank you so much. You have rightly explained it. Just to put it simple, what I'll say is signifier is physical thing.
If you take it in simpler ways, sir, like signifier and signified,
And
when we relate it to the grammatical sense, like we have a sound image, like A, E, I, O, U are the vowels, right? Okay. So when we are referring it in concept oriented, a conceptual reference would be like all vowel sounds will be using an article "an" when it is signifying the noun in singular context. So in that simpler way also we can take it, I think.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Now, this is a tree, right? I have just written a tree. The tree is a physical object that we see in the world or around us. Okay, it's a physical object. At one side you have this, but at the second side it's a mental image. Right? This is an actual physical object and this is a mental image of that object. So this is basically a concept, right? You have in the mind. So first one is signifier. And the second one is signified. This is a physical tree.
Isn't it similar to imagery in the figures of speech, sir?
We get actually signifier only through imagery map. Signified may be referred probably.
Or you think it this way. If I have written here as, you are close to the point. I'm just giving another example here. If I write something here, right? You are able to see it. That I have written something, PEN. Now, after reading this or after seeing this, there is an image that is forming in your mind. Right? After reading this word, PEN, on the screen, some images form in your mind of this object. So that is what is signified. This is signified and this is a signifier. So it could be an image, right? A sound. But we process only two things, sound or image. Our brain processes only two things, either sound or image or a combination of the two. So whether it's a sound that you hear or something that you see, in both the cases, what forms in your mind as a concept, right? That is what is signified, and what you are seeing or what you are hearing is a signifier. I hope I tried to simplify it. Did I clarify? Simple enough?
Can you say once again? So I'm getting confused.
Achha. No, this is something many people get confused with. So I'll that's why I'm trying to keep it as the screen has become clumsy. So I'm just erasing two things, so that will be easier. Right? Give me a second. Just let me erase this. Okay. You have two concepts. Concept number one, this is concept number two. Now, what is the difference between signifier and signified? Fire means physical object. Okay. This is something which is physical. Okay. Physical in the form of a sound or image. If I say, mobile phone, okay. If I say mobile phone, you are able to form an image of that in your mind. Somebody may be visualizing Nokia, somebody may be visualizing a model of Samsung, somebody else would be visualizing an iPhone, right? The sound is mobile phone, but the image, this mobile phone that I have called is a signifier, but because of this utterance, because of this sound, different people are forming a different image in their mind, right? Like somebody thought it to be Nokia, somebody as Samsung, somebody as Apple.
OnePlus.
So all these are what? Concepts in mind, or mental image. We also call it mental image. So this is what is referred to as signifier.
गायत्री है ना, बुलाओ गायत्री का। आ रहे
Sujata madam,
हाँ।
could you please mute yourself? Okay, so I hope now you are clear, right?
Yes, sir.
We perceive the world either through our eyes, which is visual image, or through sound. These are the two ways in which we gather information from around us. Okay. But that results into an image in mind. Whether you hear something or whether you see something, what forms in your mind is an image. Okay, that is nothing but concept or mental image. There are two different terms used. One is mental image. Some call it as concept also. Okay, that's why we say that all my ideas are in mind. Okay, so now it's not necessarily that you whatever you see around as physical thing is signifier. For example, if I'm writing something on a virtual class, right, on your screen, okay, this also becomes part of the physical reality around us. Got it? Though we are connected virtually, but you are able to see the screen. So the screen itself is the physical thing around in front of you. So anything like that becomes signifier. Shall we move on?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, yeah, here are some examples. Even Sasha says that each sign in a system has meaning. Okay. Okay, only by virtue of its difference from others. Now, for example, I'll give one example, that is parent. What does it mean? What is the meaning of parent?
Parents like mother and father, the one who has given birth to somebody.
Okay, good, very good. So parent means either father or mother. Okay, and they become parent because they give birth to a child, right?
Yes.
Very good. Now if you think at this example, okay, if you think at this example, you are able to understand the word parent in relation to father, mother, and child, right? If I ask you to define who's mother, what do? You'll understand it in relation to the child. Mother is somebody who has given birth to a child. A woman with her own child is a mother. A woman who has given birth to a child is a mother, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that is what Saussure says here. Sign in a system has meaning only by virtue of its difference from the others, which means if we take parent as a sign, okay, it has meaning only by virtue of difference from others. Like for example, a parent is somebody who is given birth to a child. Okay, so somebody who has not given birth to a child cannot be a parent, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Therefore, any meaning that is coming out of a system is because of the difference of each part within the system. Let's take example here. A tree has a meaning only because of its difference with other concepts like bush, plant, etc. Tree acquires a positive entity phonetically in contrast to science sounds like free and trade. Now, because it is not bush, it's not plant, that is why it is a tree. So the meaning of a tree is emerging because of its difference with other related things, whether in sound or in writing. In sound, it's not free, it's tree. There is a difference at one syllable. Okay. Instead of fa, instead of ta, we have fa. So free, tree. So tree is tree because it's not free. Tree is tree because it's not plant. So that's what Ferdinand de Saussure says. Sign has a meaning only by virtue of its difference from others. And that is why we teach children saying that no, you don't be a bad person, be a good person. Okay. We tell them that how bad persons behave, so you don't do that to become a good person, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Vemana says, no, Uppu karpurambu, oka polika nundu. Chuda ruchula jada veru. Purushulandaru, punya purushulu veraya, Vishwadabhirama, Vinura, Vema. So, meaning of a word at a word level or at a sentence level or at any level, okay, is emerging because of its contrast to some other similar thing. You take this argument to any level, this idea to any level, and you will understand that yes, day is day because it's not night, right? Okay, now we'll move on to some other concepts related to structuralism. We have had satisfactory or so far satisfactory conversation on this. Now, if we move on to talk about other key concepts that initially been recalled by Ramu, that is we have this concept of lang parole also in structuralism. Yes, same the same concepts are given by again Ferdinand de Saussure. Okay, he says that entire human potential for speech or universal human phenomenon of language is called langue. Okay, it's langue because these are French words, so pronunciation is slightly different than what we have in English. Okay, and coming to language, coming to lang, he says lang or tongue, system of language like English. And the third term is parole, which is nothing but speech, use of language. That is external manifestation of language. Now, how we can understand this? I'll try to draw a diagram to explain this. You have this thing, this circle, right? This is language. Please pay attention to the spelling here. That's why it's different, because it's a different word altogether, and it's from French, so it's written differently. Now, this is the human potential to speech. Human potential for speech. What does it mean? As I told you earlier, we have, so far surveyed as many as 5,000 different languages. I don't know from where this disturbance is coming. Okay. So this language is basically the human potential for speech. Now, our potential is unlimited, as I told you in the last class also. We as human beings are able to create as many languages as possible. So far, the language experts were able to trace as many as 5,000 languages. Now, that is not the end. So far, this world continues to rotate. Human beings can develop their own language. New languages every now and then. So that is the potential, overall potential of human beings. That is what is called language. Excuse me, my little daughter has intruded into the classroom. I'll just request her to go away. 1 second. I'm sorry, my daughter will not disturb us. Okay, so what I was saying is, the other three concepts that are given by Ferdinand de Saussure were language, lang, and parole. What does he mean by language is, it is the human potential for speech. We as human beings have been creating languages after languages, right? You go to China, you'll find there are varieties of Chinese. And if you come to India, you have so many different dialects and languages. You go to any part of the world, you'll see that there are more and more number of people speaking different languages. So we have the ability as human beings to create languages. So that ability, that potential is what is meant by language in Saussurean terms, in the words of Saussure. Okay. Now, second part, what is lang? Now, in this unlimited potential of human beings for speech, you have, say, one language. Okay. This is one of the unlimited potential. We are just taking only one as an example. You take any Hindi, English, Telugu, whatever it is. I'm just taking it as Telugu. Okay. Now, this particular one example itself is a system. Okay. There's a whole system in itself. Telugu as a language has a whole system. Okay. So this is what he mean by lang. Okay. The lang is one single language or one language system. Okay. Now, if you make use of this language, if you practice this language, right? That is what he mean by parole. Okay. It is nothing but use of the language. use of Telugu. If you are taking Telugu as a system, okay, one system, then the use of that Telugu is nothing but parole according to Ferdinand de Saussure. Okay, I hope I have cleared you these concepts. Anyone who could not understand, please let me know. I can explain it once again. Missy Florence want to say something, but I'm not able to hear.
Please repeat it again. Would you please repeat it?
Okay, I'll repeat, no problem. Thank you. I'm here to repeat as many times as possible. My intention here is to make sure that you understand these basic concepts in structuralism. There are three different words or keywords that are used by Ferdinand de Saussure to explain structuralism. Earlier, he used three, that is Sine, Signified, and Signifier. Similarly, he also used three more key terms, key ideas: langue, lang, parole. Okay, these are three different ideas, concepts being given by Ferdinand de Saussure. And what does he mean by langue? Langue is nothing but it is the human potential for speech. Okay. Now take every human being on this planet and consider all the types of languages they are able to speak. And to that we call as human potential for language. So that is what he means by langue. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's take the second concept, that is lang. Right? After G, we are stopping. Lang. Okay. Now what is lang? Out of these unlimited number of languages, okay, we are just picking one language because that language itself is a system. Every language is a system. So we are taking only single language. Take English, Telugu, Urdu, Hindi, whatever. Okay. So I have just taken Telugu as one system. If that is what he means by lang. So one single language is a lang for de Saussure. Now, if we go to another concept, that is parole. By parole, what he means is usage of that language. Now, Telugu is a system. That language is a whole system. It has its syntax, grammar, vocabulary, so many things within that system. Now, when you make use of that language in your daily life, for any purpose, that usage is what Saussure mean parole. Same thing is explained by Noam Chomsky. Perhaps his terms would make more sense to you. Number one, he says competence. Second as performance. Okay. And he also says that LAD, language acquisition device. What Noam Chomsky says, okay, human being have the potential to learn the language. That is what he called as language acquisition device, LAD. So every human being has that potential to learn a language. Right. Every child that takes birth comes with the inherent ability to learn a language, isn't it? That's why, a child who takes birth in China can learn Chinese. If the same child takes birth in India, will learn one of the Indian languages. Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
So what Chomsky says that every human being has a language acquisition device. Okay, don't get confused with the word device. It means the ability, the human potential. Okay. Now, after that, he explains two terms, that is competence and performance. Competence is nothing but this. A performance is nothing but use of the language. By competence, Chomsky mean the knowledge of the language. Now, knowledge means what? For example, today, if you are coming to learn English, you are being taught grammar, isn't it? You are being taught vocabulary, and you are being taught different parts of speech and so many other things are related to that language through a book. So that is what nothing but the knowledge of the language. Which words should be used in what context, which phrase should be used in what situation, what is the correct usage, what is not the correct usage. All those things are together called knowledge of the language. And that is what he mean by competence. Okay. In the words of Ferdinand de Saussure, that is nothing but system of language. Concept, both are trying to explain the same concept but using different expressions, different words. He calls it lang, Chomsky calls it competence. He calls it system of language. Chomsky called it knowledge of the language. Now coming to parole, okay, which is nothing but use of the language, Chomsky uses a different term, that is performance, to mean the same thing. He says you have the language, you have the knowledge of the language, but when you make use of that language, right, that is nothing but is the performance. Same idea, same concept, words are different. Ferdinand de Saussure calls it lang and parole. Chomsky calls it as competence and performance. I hope I clear these concepts in as simple terms as possible.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to look at two more ideas which are related to structuralism. Those are nothing but synchronic and diachronic. Now, if you, yeah.
Sir, excuse me, sir. I have a small doubt that Noam Chomsky, is it after Saussure or later, before, sir?
Much after Saussure.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Actually, Chomsky started writing in 50s, 60s. Okay. And Chomsky is actually a American linguist, whereas Ferdinand de Saussure is a Swiss linguist.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Chomsky came after the ideas of Chomsky came only after Saussure. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. In structuralism, especially in the study of the language, there are two different ways of studying the language. One is called synchronic way, the other is called diachronic. And what are these two things? In synchronic, the language study is basically at a given moment. Chronic is related to time. Remember this. Okay. When you say synchronic, it means at a time. Understand? For example, I am studying usage of Dakhini in 18th century. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is, Dakini is a dialect in our region. I hope you know that. So I'm trying to study the language at a particular time. So that kind of study has been always carried out. That is the way of how many languages have been studied. But there is another way of studying the language, that is diachronic way. Again, it is time. And here dia means through. THR. Sorry. Through. So it's also known as historical linguistics. It actually looks at how language change over time. You take a period and then you see how language has changed. Okay. Now, for example, if I am taking Shakespearean English, right? I'm starting from Shakespearean English, right? And coming up to, say, modern English. What I'll be basically doing in a diachronic study is, I'm seeing how language has changed from 16th century, okay, to modern times, say 18th century or 19th century. Language evolves, right? And that is why you see that in modern language, you don't have this suffix as eth. Thinketh, speaketh, all these eths have gone. Is also gone. So, and spelling also has changed. For example, you have whiff of bath. Have you heard of this? In Canterbury Tales. So the spelling has changed. This is for wife. W-I-F-E. This is the modern spelling. This is the spelling at the time of Canterbury Tales. Okay. That is 14th century. So language change is studied in a diachronic way. So now Saussure comes and says that diachronic study traces individual facts over a period of time, neglected properties of language as a system. So one of the criticism that Saussure brought into focus, that is, in this kind of a study, that is diachronic study, the people who studied the language over a period of time neglected, what they did? Neglected properties of language as a system. They took individual parts and studied. And what Saussure originally, propagates in his structuralist theory, that is, things should not be studied or understood in isolation. It should be studied in a larger system or context, right? So he says that, in their study of the language experts have not looked at language as a system. Rather, they have studied things as in isolation. That's what, he actually, criticized. And that is why we had to take up these 2 points related to language and the way languages are studied in the discipline. Now from here starts actual our purpose of why we have actually looked at structuralism. So as I told you, whatever was there in language has something related to literature. Now, people who basically, analyze language in this scientific way, okay, looking at, language as a system having its own units, and the meaning in that system is because of the differences of those units and all those things, has a clear bearing on the literature, because whatever you produce as literature is nothing but it is language. And we discussed earlier that poetry is poetry because there is a different usage of the language there. Instead of a sentence, you have a verse. Instead of a normal paragraph, you have stanza or couplet, right? And you don't always follow rhyme scheme, right? Meter, and all those things. But in poetry, you use all those things. So it is language that is making poetry as poetry. Similarly, anything that is studied related to language, okay, will definitely have some kind of bearing on or influence on the literature. And when this structuralism came as a new theory, people read it, people understood it, and people started taking it forward. A few of such people who understood structuralism and applied the structuralist ideas in their own different fields, they came up with new things. And one such example is narratology. Okay, we'll talk about narratology in detail in one of the units in other block. But just to give you heads up about it, Vladimir Prop, a Russian, okay, he actually made use of these structuralist ideas to understand forms of literature, especially he worked on that the concept of detective fiction. Okay, and you have Todoro, Bulgarian, and French, Janet. So these people actually made use of ideas in language, theory in language, to analyze literature, to work in the areas of literature. That is why we are looking at them and how they applied it. One of the examples that I thought would be relevant, so I brought it here. Catherine Wesley's analysis of Shakespeare's Richard III, which is, what do I fear myself? There is none else by. Richard loves Richard. That is, I am I. So this particular two lines is from Richard III, a play by Shakespeare, and these lines appear in Act 5, Scene 5. These lines, what do I fear myself? There is none else by. Richard loves Richard. That is, I am I. Now you see that usage of the language here. You have Richard loves Richard. Okay, and here you have I am I. Okay. Now, in normal, what we say, usage of the language, that there are three different components in a typical English sentence. That is subject, verb, and object. Right? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now you see that here subject is Richard, love, object. Now both subject and object have Richard here. And in this case also subject and object have I. So analyzing these kind of pieces, what Catherine Wesley says, she being structuralist, okay, she is trying to use structuralism as a theory to analyze these two lines. Okay, what she says, Richard is a split subject between self and conscious self. So these two Richards, okay, are basically two different Richards. This is a self, this is a conscious self. And if we look at the syntax, I and I, or Richard and Richard, is a disruption of the unified subject. Now, this particular usage of the language helps us to understand two different self of the Richard. One, it is you. The other is the concept of you, which other people know or which you also know. Sometimes you question yourself, right? Did I do that? Am I bad? So this shows that, there is real absolute you and there is a concept of you. The concept of you is your conscious self. Like, you are the real you, but when you look into mirror, there is another you. That is an image of you. Similarly, instead of a mirror image, there is a mental image of you, and that is your conscious self. And from there, takes birth the self-esteem, the ego, whatever you call it. The poor image of you have of yourself, right? The less confident you will be. The more clear picture you have of yourself, perhaps the more a bold and confident person you would become. So here, because of the usage of this language, it is possible to distinguish between the self and conscious self, and it also indicates the deception of the unified subject. There are two different parts of the subject. Now I hope now you understood how a theory in a language, the different understanding of a language has a bearing or influence on the literature also. I hope you took that point.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there are a few more things that
clarity. Like, is this self-consciousness is employed only by Shakespearean era, or any other authors have used such one?
Everybody applies that. Everybody applies that. Because Shakespeare is a classic, so people who worked, they took Shakespeare as an example. For example, if they take any unknown author and work on that piece, maybe a lot more people may not be able to understand, because Shakespeare is such a universal phenomenon that if somebody applies a particular theory on Shakespearean work, so it would be easier for an Indian sitting in a virtual class on language and literature will also understand that. I hope you understood what I'm trying to convey. So
Yes,
that usually people who take up difficult to know theoretical interpretations, they go with the popular writers, so that people would be already familiar with the work. So it will be easier for them to understand the criticism they are trying to make, or the thing they are trying to explain. Okay. One last thing I would like to talk about quickly in a minute or two, then we'll end this class. So formalism, there is a small distinction between formalism and structuralism. In formalism also you see that people pay attention to features of a text. Okay, they try to analyze different features within the text. Right, it includes grammar, syntax, and literary devices. But formalist approach reduces the importance of a text, historical, biographical, and cultural context. Okay, that may not be the case with the structuralism. So we'll some other time we'll take up formalism as well. So far I thought we discussed quite a few points related to structuralism. And before I close the class, I invite any kind of questions you have, so that quickly we can look at it again and end this session for today and meet tomorrow, hopefully. Any questions from your side?
Sir, I have a small request, sir.
Yes.
Last week, Sundays, sir,
Mhm.
only 2 classes happened, sir. Your class and sixth paper class, sir. Next 8, 9, 10 papers classes, they did not happen, sir. Would
Mhm.
you kindly inform our HOD to just conduct that classes, sir, continuously? Only 2 classes happened, sir, last week. Tirupati, sir, and yours class. That's it.
Okay.
Would you kindly inform HOD or any other
Definitely.
department
I'll take your message
to
across to
make them happen, sir? Because we have very little number of classes, extremely little. Last
Yes.
year we had 20 classes around.
Yeah. So I'll definitely, take your message to the head of the department, and we'll see how best we could be of help to you in such a scenario where classes couldn't take place. So from examination point of view also, we'll try to assist as much as possible. And I hope you have my number. In any kind of difficulty, you may approach. I may not be responding to you promptly because of my variety of engagements, but whenever I get time, I'll definitely respond to you and see to it that your problem is solved. Okay, related to academics, I may not be able to help you in other areas, but yeah, definitely when it comes to your subjects or examination things related to academics, I would definitely try to help you. Okay, so take care of yourself and God bless you all. Thank you.
Sir,
Yeah,
sir, would you kindly put your number in the chat box, sir?
I
Most
am
of
part
us,
of the MA English group, of the students. Why don't you please talk to someone, some of your classmates. They may be knowing my number. Today I shared the link in the group. In 2 different groups. There are 2 different groups with MA English of the Proud. So maybe you or some of your friends are there in any of these 2 groups. They'll share that. Okay.
okay, sir.
Thank you. Take care of yourself. Yeah, I just shared my number also, just to make things easy.